Today I'm replacing the water pump on my 2007 Chrysler Town & Country. The first thing I'm going to do, I set the e-brake. I'm going to jack it up and take the right front wheel off, and then I'm going to drain the coolant. On the driver's side of the radiator, there's a little drain valve here. If you can get a hose on this valve, awesome. Hopefully you won't make too much of a mess. You turn this guy until coolant starts coming out, and I'm going to stick a funnel under there and hopefully catch as much as possible, since I've replaced the radiator twice this year and would like to reuse my coolant. So on my radiator, I had to take the valve completely out. Another way to get this flowing better is to pop the radiator cap off. Once you have the coolant draining and the right front wheel off, we're going to pull this shield out of the way. There are plastic clips like this here and up along here. The water pump is tucked up in that corner right there, so removing the shield will give us easier access. We're going to take the belt off, but before we do, we want to loosen these 3 water pump pulley bolts. It's easier with the tension of the belt on it to loosen those bolts. You don't want to take them all the way out, you just want to loosen them. I'm using a ratcheting wrench, but any wrench will do. Next, we're going to loosen the serpentine belt using this belt tool with a 1/2 inch connector on it. The tensioner is right above a crank pulley, and it's got the 1/2 inch hole right here. You just turn it counterclockwise, and it releases tension off of the belt. Then you can pull it off of one of the pulleys and have it out of your way. I have another video on how to remove and replace the serp belt on this vehicle. Since I've already done it, I'm not going to do it today because it's still in pretty good shape, but since you have it off to do the water pump, if yours is starting to wear, then it's a good time to do these jobs together. Also make note of the serp belt routing so that you can get it back on the way it's supposed to go. Once you have the belt out of the way, you can loosen all the pulley bolts and get the pulley loose from the water pump. I don't think we're going to have clearance to pull it completely out, but we'll see what we need to do. I don't have clearance to get it completely out of the way, but I do have clearance to get to the water pump bolts. I believe there's 5 of them. If you're curious where the bolt holes are, look at your new water pump. But I've got these ones. I'm going to start loosening them and see if I can pull the old pump out with the pulley instead of messing with the mounts and everything. These guys look like 10 millimeters. Got 2 bolts back there, 2 on the front, then 1 up on the top that I'm gonna try and sneak up to. There's a better shot of the top bolt. This little hole, I've already got the bolt out, then I've got these 2 and 2 in the back. So I've got them all loose now. Pop them out, see if I can pop the water pump out. Front 3 loose. Looks like they are all the same length, but always double check. Make sure the right bolts are going in the right hole. Alright, all 5 bolts loose. You might have to give it a little tap. Pop it loose from that seal. Hopefully not make a big old mess. Alright, I've got the water pump and the pulley loose on the bottom, but I'm hitting the fender well. think what I'm gonna have to do is stick a jack under the oil pan, take these 3 mount bolts loose, and see if I can lower the engine enough to wiggle the water pump out of the way. I pulled the top of the air filter housing off for better access to the upper mount bolts. Loosen this clamp. There's a sensor back here that I disconnected, and then there's 2 clamps here and a hose right here that goes to this guy. This connector, you slide back the red locking tab, then you can press to loosen the connector, and now I have easier access to these 3 mount bolts. I've got a jack underneath the oil pan supporting the engine. We'll see once I get those bolts loose if I can lower it enough to get the water pump out of the way. Once I took those 3 upper mount bolts out, I lowered the engine about an inch or so. Now I have enough clearance to pull the water pump out together with the pump. Or together with the pulley, sorry. Before I go together with my new one, I want to make sure I get this surface super clean. Then we can get the new water pump installed. I always compare my old part to my new part, make sure there's no hardware that I need to swap over. Some water pumps will have you swap this plug, but mine came with a new one. Make sure your plug is flush down in place. And then I'm going to get probably put a little silicone or something so that I make sure that this seal sticks in place and doesn't get wedged before I start all my bolts. Alright, so I've got the surface all nice and clean. I put a little bit of silicone around the seal so that hopefully it'll stay in place. I've got to try and put these up together because I don't think I can put the pulley in after the fact. Once I get them up in place, making sure that the seal is up in place, I will start all 5 bolts. Like so. So I've got it wedged up there. Pretty sure the seal is looking good. I'm gonna start the bolts. Like so. So I've got it wedged up there. Pretty sure the seal is looking good. I'm gonna start the bolts. Okay, I've got these front 3 started, not tightened, just started by hand, including that upper one that you can't quite see. Now I'm going to scooch the pulley to the other side, start these 2 back bolts. Once I have everything started, then I'm going to go around and tighten them. I'm going to go around and tighten them once, and then go around and tighten a second time. Make sure everything is good and snug, then we can put the belt back on and the mount back. Alright, I've got the water pump completely tightened down. Now I can start the 3 water pump pulley bolts, tighten them down by hand, and I'll put the belt back on. Using my SERP belt tool, I slip my belt back into place, double checking every pulley to make sure that the ribs are lined up correctly. If you don't have a tool like this, I'm pretty sure you can use a 22mm wrench up here or some kind of pry. This guy's super helpful. It was about 40, maybe 50 bucks at Harbor Freight. Now I can tighten my water pump pulley bolts. Next, I will jack my engine back up until I can start my upper mount bolts. Start all 3 of them by hand so I'm not cross-threading everything. Then I can snug them down into place and put my air filter box back in. Make sure the 3 tabs on the back of the air filter box go into place. We can get this boot back on, this hose back on, these clamps back on, and this connector back on, locked in. Again. I'm gonna put the shield back up into place. the wheel back on. Need some new clips. Make sure that the valve on the bottom of the radiator is closed tight and top off the radiator. Get the vehicle running up to operating temperature, double check for leaks, make sure your belt is routed correctly and everything is looking good. Then let the vehicle cool down so that you can double check the coolant level. Make sure nothing burps, nothing's low, everything is good to go, and that's how you do the water pump.